You're listening to Mind the Gap with Michael Comyn. In this episode, Why We Slow for Blue Lights but Stop for Our Values, Michael explores the fragile reach of power and the enduring strength of influence. From speed limits to the cultural change around drink driving, this is a reflection on why power compels us for a moment, but influence reshapes us for life. Here's Michael.
I want to start with a simple idea. You're driving on a motorway. The speed limit is 120 kilometers per hour. And yet, what do most of us do? We sit at about 125, maybe 127 if we're feeling confident. The reason is not that we've decided it's somehow safer to drive faster or that the car runs better at that speed. We do it because the law says 120, but in our heads we're calculating, how much can I push it without getting caught? That's power at work. Power says, here is a rule, here is the punishment if you break it. And we respond, but only just enough to stay out of trouble. The behaviour's temporary. It depends on whether we see a Garda car, or whether we think there's a camera on the bridge, whether we believe a punishment is likely. Now let us put that against another law of the road, drink driving. Years ago, people thought nothing of having a few pints and getting behind the wheel. At first, the only thing that stopped them was the fear of getting caught. Roadside tests, bans, penalty points. That was power. But something interesting happened. Over time, influence took hold. The campaigns, the stories, the conversations in pubs and living rooms, and gradually the culture shifted. Now, most people would not dream of drink driving. Not because they're afraid of the Garda checkpoint, but because it's seen as socially unacceptable, even shameful. Friends intervene. Families object. Society's absorbed the value. That's influence. This is the difference I want to explore today. Power changes behaviour for a moment. Influence changes it for a lifetime. Robert Greene, in the 48 Laws of Power, opens with a warning. Never outshine the master. That law is about survival in systems built on raw power. In a world of power, you act carefully, not because you believe it's right, but because you fear the consequences. The trouble with power is that it doesn't last. It requires constant surveillance, constant policing, and constant threats. The speed limit works only if we believe the Garda might be waiting up ahead. Remove the threat, and the behaviour disappears. Power's immediate, but shallow. It bends behaviour without changing hearts. Influence, by contrast, works deeper. Greene describes it in Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Real change comes when people believe, when the message seeps into their values and identity, when the action is no longer about avoiding punishment, but about aligning with who they want to be. That's the drink driving story. The campaigns did not just hammer home penalties. They told stories. They appealed to family, to safety, to community. They showed the devastation of a life lost because someone thought they could handle just two. The influence shifted the culture until the choice not to drive after drinking became a matter of character, not compliance. Influence, once established, does not require constant policing. It sustains itself. The Stoics had a lot to say about this distinction, though they didn't use our language of power and influence. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Influence comes from example. Power shouts orders, influence lives them. Seneca wrote that nothing is more honourable than a graceful heart. People rarely feel gratitude under raw power. They feel resentment. But under influence, when they see integrity, honesty, courage, they respond with loyalty. Cleanthes, one of the early Stoics, made the point that law can only command, wisdom persuades. This is the essence of influence. It persuades where power merely compels. Think about our own experiences at work. Maybe you've had a boss who rules with power. They micromanage, they shout, they make threats. Yes, people complied. They filled out the forms, met the deadlines, But what happened the minute the boss left the room? Resentment bubbles up. Corners were cut. Morale sank. Power got results, but only under the glare of authority. Now compare that to a leader who shaped through influence, someone who inspired, who listened, who set a standard by their actions. You did not do the work because you feared punishment. You did it because you respected them, because their vision made sense, because it felt right. And even when they were not around, you still worked to the same standard. This is the long reach of influence. From an emotional intelligence perspective, the contrast is clear. Power is external. It overrides autonomy. It says, do this or else. And the brain responds with compliance, but also with resistance. That resistance may stay hidden, but it festers. Influence is internal. It engages empathy, self-awareness, and social awareness. It recognizes that people act not only from fear, but from meaning. Influence says, here is why this matters, and here is why it aligns with your values. And because it connects with identity, it lasts. Daniel Goleman, one of the fathers of emotional intelligence, often reminds us that behaviour change sticks only when it engages emotion. Influence works because it touches the heart as well as the mind. Let's go back to the road for a moment. Speed limits are still seen as external rules. Things to be tested, pushed, worked around. People rationalise. Is it safe enough? Everyone else is doing it. The influence has not yet quite taken hold. Drink driving, though, is different. Here the influence has reshaped the narrative. People don't argue that 2 or 3 pints are fine. The cultural consensus says otherwise. The story has struck. And it shows us the critical point. Power can start the process, laws matter, enforcement matters, but lasting change only comes when influence takes over. Greene's Law 47 warns, do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, know when to stop. This is the trap of power. Push too far and you provoke rebellion. We've all seen it in organisations. Leaders tighten control, pile on rules, micromanage every decision. For a while, compliance increases, and then resistance grows. People push back, quietly or openly. Power overreaches and influence evaporates. The Stoics would have smiled knowingly at this. Epictetus reminds his students that while you can control somebody's body with chains, you cannot control their mind. Influence speaks to that mind. Power shackles the body, one endures, the other crumbles. I recall a conversation with a senior manager who was frustrated that his team would not listen. He had the authority, the title, the power, but the more he pushed, the more they resisted. His mistake was assuming that power alone was enough. He hadn't invested in influence, in listening, in understanding what motivates his team, in aligning their goals with his vision. Here's the hard truth. Power is easy. It's quicker. It gets short-term results. But it's brittle, and influence is slower. It takes patience, consistency, and integrity, but once it's there, it's actually quite durable. This is not only about leaders. Think about parenting. You can shout at a child to tidy their room. That's power. And yes, maybe they'll do it. But tomorrow, you're going to have to shout again. Or you can build influence by modelling, by encouraging, by showing why order matters. The behaviour takes longer to emerge, but it lasts longer too. Or think about your friendships. You can pressure someone into a decision with guilt or fear. But if you win their heart, if you speak to their values, your influence shapes the choice they make even when you're not there. So here's the reflection for today. When you look at your own actions, as a leader, as a parent, as a friend, ask yourself, am I leaning on power or building influence? Power is the quick fix. It works when the Garda car is visible, but the moment the blue lights vanish, the behaviour slips. Influence is the long game. It's the reason people no longer drive home after 6 pints, even if they're certain there's no checkpoint for miles. It's the reason some leaders inspire loyalty long after they've left the building. Robert Greene's laws of power are fascinating, but even he reminds us that the sharp edge of power is never enough on its own. To endure, power must transform into influence. Or as he puts it in Law 43, work on the hearts and minds of others. The Stoics would have agreed. Marcus Aurelius did not command virtue, he lived it. Seneca did not preach gratitude, he showed it. And influence begins with example, not command. So next time you're tempted to lean on your own power, whether in a meeting, at home, or even in your own habits, pause and ask, how could I shift this into influence? What would it take to connect not just with the behaviour, but with the belief beneath it? Because in the end, power may get compliance. Influence wins your conviction, and conviction is what endures. You've been listening to Mind the Gap. Today, we explored the fragile reach of power and the lasting depth of influence. The examples on the road remind us that power is the speed limit. Influence is the drink driving ban. One makes us calculate how much we can get away with. The other shapes who we are. And if you'd like to explore these themes more deeply, my book Mind the Gap is now available worldwide in Kindle, paperback and hardback editions on Amazon. And it brings together many of the stories and reflections we hear about here, drawing on Stoicism, emotional intelligence and everyday life. And you'll find the link in the program notes. So here's a final thought. Driving at 125 instead of 120 on the motorway feels like a clever way to save time. But the maths tell a different story. Over a distance of 100 kilometres, you may gain 2 minutes. Over 200, perhaps 4. Yet the physics and the research are clear. That tiny speed increase, less than 5%, raises your risk of a fatal crash by closer to 15 or even 20%. The time gained is almost nothing. The risk is real. And that is the essence of power versus influence. Power says, keep it at 120 or you'll be punished, and we push back by bending the rule. Influence would remind us why the speed limit exists at all, that safety outweighs the illusion of speed. And when we believe this, the behaviour changes not for a moment, but for a lifetime. Drive safe and mind the gap.
That was Mind the Gap. If you'd like to take these reflections further, Michael's book Mind the Gap is now available worldwide in Kindle, paperback and hardback editions on Amazon. Join us again next time for more insights at the meeting point of philosophy, psychology and emotional intelligence.